So, as Mohammed has said, my name is Guy Fayter. I'm based in Bilbao, in Spain. This will become more important later because we have a couple of languages here, including an indigenous one, which is the oldest in Europe. I've been a teacher trainer, a team leader for the last 5 years, and I've been teaching for the last 20 years. So this morning, we're going to look at how AI, specifically ChatGPT, has been used in the classroom and in some cases misused. We're also going to see some reactions from the professionals and see where the future lies. There will also be some ways which you could use. And as a listening task, if you have any questions, please ask me at the end. So I'm a former gamer. I don't have much time nowadays, but I used to play a lot of games, both video games and board games. And as a consequence, I've always kept an eye on modern developments, and now I have a gamer's mindset, which I believe has helped me a lot through all of this. So if I click onto this, you can see what a gamer's mindset is. We have continuous feedback. We learn to plan. We're not afraid of failure. We learn from our mistakes. We're curious. Games present a growth mindset, which helps us to overcome challenges. And the last one, and we will see examples of this from my students, we learn how to push back boundaries, which is important with new tech. So one day in Discord, which is a forum for different interests, I saw, I'm sure everybody's aware of this, the ChatGPT. I think it's really important at this point to realize it's not used for language learning. We have adapted it to do this, but at this moment, it's not being specifically designed to help learn other languages. So I signed up and I started experimenting with my own things, and I contacted my colleague, Josh Underwood, who's given presentations on this. Okay, and if you just give me a second, and what I will do is I will put this into the chat so you can have a look at when you wish. Specifically, how to use AI and voice assistants. As I say, I found this very useful. So we're both interested in this topic, and it's something which we've always been trying to use and trying to look towards the future. He suggested I researched this article, and again, I'll put this into the chat. I realized I needed some form of academic reference. Now, it's quite a long article, so I'm not going to go through it now. This was, when was this? 2021, and it was the first wave of chatbots. So I used this to think about my research and how I was going to do this. It was important I had some ideas. To the right, you can see where they are referenced in the article. But I thought it was important to think about how we're going to use them in the wild, as they say. It has to be in an educational setting. How easy is it going to be for the students and the perceived application for learning? The effect on their behavior and the outcomes, and towards the end, we will break this down slightly more. And lastly, the novelty effect on language learning. Now, this could be a couple of things. It could be, do the students get bored of it really quickly? How do they feel with using it? So I thought this was an important starting point. Here we can see the different ages and the Common European Framework references for this. I didn't want to go any younger than 14 because they didn't really have the language, and I didn't also think they would enjoy it as much. We go up to what we call a pre-advanced, to the C1.1, and as you will see, the ages are going up. Then we got to the advanced, and finally a bit older, and it was proficiency. Moving on to the rules, which I thought was absolutely needed, because we have to remember with this type of technology, we still don't know how it's going to be used, what we can do with it. So I thought it was, as I say, as a way of trust with the students and for the teacher to have some rules before we start. For me, the first one was absolutely vital, the critical thinking. What are we going to use it for? How am I going to remember the information? How is this going to be used for my education or for my pleasure? As we will see from point number 2, the old adage of garbage in, garbage out, meaning what you put into a system, what you put into a computer program, is sometimes what you get out. So in point number 2, and this is something I'm sure a lot of you are aware of, it's absolutely vital to correctly form the question. And this refers to prompt engineering, which has 2 meanings: the coding meaning, which I'm not focusing on today, but the prompt engineering is merely how we make the question. What can we do in the ChatGPT? If one form of question doesn't work, how can I reform it to get what I want? This is in direct relation to the negotiation of meaning with language. Point number 3, as we are aware as well, this was used just when it came out between December and January. And at the time, a lot of the information, and still is, cannot be trusted and can also be very biased. I have to say, because I used it in an educational setting and I was controlling it, so to speak, I didn't come across any bias. And again, we will see what I've used it for, which gives me reason to say this. Number 4, I told my students it's no use just, and I'm sure this happens in your class, mainly from Wikipedia, the students just copy paste. This cannot be done. Teachers are now obviously a lot more aware of the implications of this technology. And I suggested they used it to cite any references, which you can do, and also to put in some of their own words, and therefore, hopefully, some mistakes. Because if you see your student suddenly, whose writing has been a little bit average, suddenly be amazing, obviously, you're going to be wondering. Point number 5, you're directly responsible for the bot and the answers. This was a way to maybe calm the parents' fears a little bit. I didn't want them to use it in an exam settings. We just used it as fun in an English class. It's their tech as well. They're going to use it for the future. So they need to know how to use it wisely. So moving on to the youngest class and what we've done. So the first thing we did was I involved the class. I asked them what they wanted to do. I didn't see the point in me just telling them what was going on. I thought it was really important for them to play with it in a controlled environment. So the first thing we did, and this came from their course books, They had their textbooks open and they were learning about Mexican independence. And they didn't believe me when I told them what the ChatGPT could do, so they started questioning it. They started testing it. So they asked the questions. They had the information from a published source in front of them, and they asked questions about this. Number two, again, I live in the Basque Country in Spain. So they were doing some homework about monasteries and history, maybe heritage of the countryside. And again, they had this information, so they fact-checked it with what was available online. And then for them, the ChatGPT translated everything into Basque or Euskera. But that wasn't done with me. That was done later on for them. So they were quite surprised. The last one here, and this was maybe more of an entertaining thing. We got the bot to pretend it was Harry Styles, and then we had a role play. And as you can imagine, the teenagers in my class absolutely loved this. They knew they weren't really speaking to Harry Styles, but it didn't matter. They had fun, they were asking questions, and that was a really nice moment. I now believe there are many applications where you can speak to historical figures, good and bad. You can also always get the bot to role play whatever famous person you wish. So that was the youngest one. Moving up now, as we can see, again, this lot wanted to test the knowledge of physics, because so far we'd been doing history or fun things. And again, they were happy to use that. The next one, the first time that history for homework reasons came in, they wanted to learn about Napoleon's mum, so we did this, and this is all in English. The next one was interesting. We started asking it trolley problems. Just in case you're not aware, a trolley problem is a moral or ethical dilemma. What do you choose and why? So they gave, and I thought this is quite a nice one. If you had to kill a T-Rex, would you prefer 100 gorillas or a billion ants? And that generated some laughter in the class, but the AI objected. And I thought that was quite nice. I think it said something like, I do not agree with using violence. You should not kill, all these things. We tried a few more, and again, the same outcome. And lastly, again, a bit more mature, the philosophy, the allegory of the cave. The students had a conversation with a bot, as if they were talking to a philosophy teacher, and were stunned. As we can see at the bottom, and we will see some examples or a response to this, there was some silliness, a bit immature. And again, I stopped it as it was inappropriate. I didn't think it would be beneficial. And overall, I'm glad I did this, and the students respected this. Okay. Again, coming into advanced, the geology, the essay. This was the first real application of using the bots in an English-speaking classroom. The typical for and against essay. They wrote out the responses, then they compared those with ChatGPT, and that was a useful thing to do as well. Again, more trolley problems, which were morally rejected again. Law and philosophy in Spanish. This was interesting at the bottom here. They got the bot to write a story about 3 students. And the bot produced the story, and they were really scared because it was, I think it was something like the weekend party or whatever, and they thought they were being spied on. They weren't quite sure, which brings to mind issues of privacy. I'm glad they realized that this could be a problem. An interesting, what can I say here? Yeah, something interesting happened here when the bot started code switching for whatever previous, maybe it was Napoleon's mum, so they thought it was in French, maybe it was in Spanish or Basque, but it started switching. So one minute it was, we were typing in English, and then the next minute it translated into Spanish, then we put it into Spanish, then it translated and went into Basque, and it did really quickly and really well. So moving on, they made a bit more creative here. They wanted to make a song, which they did, and then later it was translated into Portuguese. So they just put in a couple of parameters. This can be done. You can get the bot to, and I think there's other applications now to sing what you've put in. Again, more English in a classroom applications, the own opinion essay, the Secret Santa, which turned out to be a really good idea for the student's mum. Some tidal power for the more engineers. And the last one, and going back to the gaming theory, where you need to constantly push it back. One of the students asked it to write a story without using letter E, and it couldn't do it. So the student was very happy because it had broken the bot. This does exist, by the way, just in case you're not sure. This has been written a long time ago, but there is a novel without the letter E. So this is what we used it for. We're going to listen now to some of the reactions. This is about 5 minutes just to hear what's happening.
So I have some B2 students. We've just seen the technology in the classroom, and here are some opinions.
I'm 15, and in my opinion, I think this would be the future. I'm a bit scared of the technology, but on the other hand, it's very useful and comfortable.
I'm 15 also, and it seems to me that it's a very useful tool, and I'm also scared because I think that mobile phones listen to us, and it might be something dangerous.
I'm 14 and I'm very confused. I don't know how to feel about this.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, we are 15 years old and we are so excited about this new program because it will be a good chance to do faster the homework. We will use it for searching information and do the work faster.
And how do you feel after seeing this?
A bit scared, but also excited. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that's from the youngest ones. I'm going to quickly move on to the middle lot.
We are some students from British Council with 17 years old, and we think that this application is so powerful, but we also have to say that we don't know about all problems that can cause to students or also for all teachers of the world.
Yes, we think that as an educational tool it can be very useful, but we also think that it can be like TikTok, that they record you while you don't use it, so they can get all your information from that.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
Okay, thank you. Mister?
Okay, and moving on to the proficient lot.
When I first saw it, I was shocked and amazed because I think that it's going to be the future, but I also feel scared because I think that if it expands very rapidly, I think it should be under control, because if not, it could destroy a lot of professions and lots of things.
And I would add that it's going to be the future in some years, and we are going to use it, and multinationals, teachers, and everyone is going to use it.
Thank you very much.
So for constraints of time, I'm now going to move on to some written examples and just quickly comment on them. So the first one, as we saw earlier, mainly relating to the novelty effect here, she can't stop using it. They are using it all the time, and it's a continuing thing. I will be telling you my progress with this app, and later on I have a class and they will tell me what they've been doing with it this week. Here's an example of how important it is to form the question correctly. And again, they were telling me what's happening with the progress. I'm going to read this one out because it's not the best handwriting, but the idea is interesting. I've known and been using this revolution in the AI industry for almost a year. He uses different types. My experience with this has been mind-changing. It's certainly something that's changing and is going to change our relationship with technology and our form of working. And this is, again, this is a gamer. He really likes using computers. Earlier, I talked about a potential misuse, and this is an example of what happened. Specifically here, this student wanted to type in how to build and create an atomic bomb, which I stopped, obviously. And thankfully, the bot said it was very dangerous, very harmful. For me, the more important thing here, though, I wanted to see how far it can go. So again, the students were pushing the bot and think about the technology. The last one here, a very enthusiastic student, as we can see. It's fantastic. It's solved all my problems. Okay, and then goes on to talk about it. This comment at the bottom. I also reckon that this isn't as good as we all think, because if we use it every day, we won't learn how to solve problems. She obviously used critical thinking, and I think this is important to remind our students. It's not a magic pill for everything. As we can say, as we've heard as well, there were a lot of people who were scared, they were impressed, amazed. A few said it was unethical, which was made me happy because that's nice when they critically think. Dangerous, spying, all of these ideas. Moving on to some of the reactions of professionals I contacted for this. The questions we will break down. And as I'm sure you can appreciate, I sent this to 8 people and there's 8 questions, so I only edited certain parts. But for me, it was more important to involve local education. So I spoke to a Basque teacher and headmaster at a public school. There was also a technological Basque teacher, a computer science Basque teacher as well. A learning design and teacher trainer who's involved with artificial intelligence and designing different applications and courses for this. I spoke to a SEN coordinator in the Middle East and North Africa, as well as an English teacher there as well. And for local, the local parts, academic coordinator and teacher training coordinator, who I work with as well. Okay, so most had heard about this. I found it funny that there was a lot on chat shows. Do you currently use it for your work? If so, how? So here, you can see at the top, this is all in Basque, and the response was in English. And this is the computer science professor. Okay. And this is from one of my colleagues who has used it for a long time, and recently they've started using Canva for more visual and for younger students. I'm sure some of you may be thinking, have I used any artificial intelligence for this presentation? And the answer is no. The only thing I've used is Google Translate to translate it from Basque into English and English into Basque, as we can see here. This is an interesting point for everyone to collaborate and share our ideas. And quickly, because I'm very much aware of the time. Giving the right cues to the chatbot. Okay, so the first 3 questions. The advantages and disadvantages. Technology is groundbreaking and ultimately very useful indeed. And again, if the cues, if the prompts are well expressed. It's always important to go back and check for any errors which have been made. Have you used this in the classroom, or at least talked about it? Yes. And as we saw with the earlier talk with Ron, he was recommending using this. And I'll come back towards that at the end as well, where we stand at the moment. Okay. Moving on to the idea that it's more apt for neurodiverse people. So specifically the different applications we can have, the idea that it's more useful for this is valid. Okay, and down here as well, for people who are more autistic. And very quickly in the chat here, this is a very general idea of how it can be used for people with autism. Okay, so moving on. To use AI to motivate them to use creative tasks, create a video through spoken description. This is now available. You can use this if you look for it. Yes, you can use it to build lessons. I have played with this. I've experimented with this. Yes, it understands the Common European Framework. Yes, it can mark writings. All of these things are done. I thought this was important as well. If you want to create your own materials, you can even create your own exams, depending on what you want to focus on. Yes, some of the resources we have, and I'm certainly in Europe, are a bit bizarre, are Eurocentric. So if you put enough input in, you can tailor your classes to what you want to be taught. Guys, I've briefly seen a question in the chat, but I haven't had much time to answer it. Yes, it would help us as teachers to promote autonomous learning skills. This is the idea of the flipped classroom, which is coming into fashion as well. This briefly touched on the idea of plagiarism. It would be interesting to see how teachers cope, which varies greatly from their efforts. Would you be willing to collaborate with me? Majority, most people were. Some interesting points were raised. Some people don't like tech. Some people don't like to spend so much time online, and I can understand, I can respect that. And I like this one. Thanks for all, but I'm not interested. Fair enough. So if we go back to the points I had at the beginning, what contexts have chats been being used? The world is your oyster. We've seen as many different applications as you wish. Number two, the study must be conducted in educational settings for educational purposes. Yes, this is vital for me. Important though, impose your rules, involve the class, get them involved as much as possible. It's not your tech, it's for them, for the future. How easy was it? Very easy. Very, very easy for them to see it, and useful in not only in English, in many languages. Number four, I'll look at in a minute. The novelty effect, well, it has not worn off. People are still using it and we're still talking about it. Maybe more important for everybody here, I found that students read a lot more, which to me, I always emphasize the importance of reading, and it was a beautiful thing to see, reading everything, reading. They're constantly engaged, they're always speaking, they're always working with each other. But that was an important aspect as well. With other applications, it can help listening skills. We've talked a lot about the correct formation of questions. This improves grammar and lexical awareness. It can help personalization and send. I believe it encourages critical thinking, because as a teacher, you will not allow them onto the technology in the classroom. What they do outside is we can't control that. But in the classroom, yes, before you do anything, what are we going to do today? Why are we going to use it? What do we want it to do? How are we going to use this information? How are we going to record it? How are we going to learn from it? We've seen some parts which can be very inspirational. if under supervision or guidance, it can aid writing skills. Mike Sharple has recently put an essay last year about this, and again, I'll just put this into the chat because it's very useful. Okay. And that's pretty much what we've done. Moving forward, there's many more apps, as I'm sure you're aware. I believe at the moment, it's more beneficial just to wait to see what's happening, because I'm sure we've got Bing versus Bard, the great battles between the two of them at the moment. A lot of my students complain that ChatGPT was not accessible or only for short amounts of time. This is true. It's still a beta version. This is what happens. Again, I will put this into the chat for you to see, because it might be very useful for all of you. This is a library of all the materials which are available. We all need to be aware of this. We need to work together. This will involve workshops. This will involve collaboration. So, thank you.